During the Second World War, Hitler had an obsession trying to win the war by designing and building the biggest weaponry. Some of these concepts never made it past the drawing board, but some did go to mass production, and one of these was the huge Jagdtiger tank destroyer. It was the heaviest beast that was used on the battlefields of the Second World War. The Jagdtiger could dominate the battlefield with a combination of its immensely powerful armament and its almost impenetrable armor. The Jagdtiger's main gun was a 128 mm Pak 44 gun that fired gigantic 65-pound shells. One hit from one of these shells was almost guaranteed to take out any Allied tank, and these shells were effective at very long ranges. They could easily immobilize an enemy tank at ranges of around 2 to 3 miles. The armor around the housing of the main gun was a massive 250 mm, which no Allied tank round could penetrate. Covering the entire vehicle in armor that thick would have made it too heavy, so armor around the lower hull was a 150 mm and the sides and rear 80 mm. This meant that if a Jagdtiger could be flanked, it could be taken out from the sides or rear, or from the top by aircraft. Still, if the Jagdtiger was advantageously positioned on the battlefield, it would be tremendously difficult to take out one of these huge tank destroyers. The huge machine weighed in at 79 short tons, and the motor used to move this mass of steel and machinery was a 690 horsepower Maybach engine that was used on the much smaller Panther tank. While the engine was fine for moving the Panther around, it struggled enormously with the Jagdtiger. One of the most famous tank battles involving the Jagdtiger was the Battle of Chaumont in the morning of 23rd of December 1944. The village of Chaumont is located 11 kilometers south of Bastogne. During the dark days of December 1944, a fierce battle went on in the vicinity of the village between the 4th American Armored Division and the German Panzer Lehr Division. Bastogne was almost entirely encircled by German troops, and this battle was needed in order to liberate the city. According to the words of the commanding officer of the 8th Tank Battalion, 4th Armored Division, it was a platoon of 4 Jagdtigers. Tanks in front of me had been hit. B Company was downtown, and you cannot turn because of the narrow streets, so we are very vulnerable. I told my driver to start backing up. I began to breathe a bit easier when it seemed we were out of the range. When suddenly I'd heard this loud sound just for an instant. The whole tank was pushed forward as if a sledgehammer had hit it. A 128 mm shell, which should have breezed through the turret like a hot knife through butter, must have hit and bounced off. I shouted at the driver, "Keep going." As we were moving back, I noticed there was a seam in the tank turret with daylight showing through it, so I knew something had hit the turret. We finally pulled the tank out of range. I asked myself the question, why are we still here? Why did my tank survive this battle when it had had this terrible blow? The Jagdtiger's 128 mm shell hit it and was deflected. It was an absolute miracle that I survived that battle. The result? The Americans lost 18 tanks to no loss to the Jagdtigers. It was a total disaster, and the 4 Jagdtigers turned the battle on its head. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and support my channel on PayPal. Details in the description box.